What's up guys, my name is John Evans. I help athletes to jump higher like Isaiah Rivera, Tony Crosby, Donovan Hawkins, and Dominic Gonzalez. In this video, we're gonna be talking about 3 secrets to jumping higher even if you're not an explosive athlete. All right, number 1, we're talking about retraining your tendons. Tendons can be softer or they can be stiffer. Stiffer is only better if you can use it. A good analogy for this is jumping on a trampoline. Imagine a really heavy guy jumping on a trampoline versus a very light one. The heavier guy is going to be able to compress that trampoline and jump way higher, versus a lighter athlete is not going to be able to compress that trampoline and jump higher on it. This is a good illustration of how tendons function with the muscle. Ideally, you want a very stiff tendon and a very strong muscle. This is like the heavy person jumping on a very stiff trampoline. They're going to be able to compress that trampoline, stretch it, and get a lot of lift from it, versus the person who is lighter or weaker in the analogy. This person is not going to be able to stretch that tendon if it's too stiff and they're too weak. An example of an athlete who has really stiff tendons but can't use them are athletes who do not jump high often approach and amortize a lot. Athletes who have an optimal ratio of tendon stiffness to muscle RFD jump very high, like Isaiah Rivera. If you watch your jump and you notice that you're squatting really deep and you're spending a lot of time on the ground, you either have really low RFD or tendons that are way too stiff. What this means is you probably have a history of doing a lot of resistance training and not a lot of RFD training. Now, RFD is short for rate of force development. Ways that you can improve your rate of force development include exercises like hex bar jump, power clean, clean pull, and plyometrics. Further, I want to mention that tendons are only stiff when you pull on them. They're a very unique material, similar to the way that when you slap water, it's very hard, you'll feel it on your hand, versus when you put your hand in very slowly, it's not very stiff. This is also why guys tend to tear their Achilles on false steps when the calf is not generating a lot of force, but the tendon is under an immense amount of deformation. If you are an athlete who has really strong muscles, but specifically really good rate of force development, then you need to stiffen your tendons by doing hypertrophy training and max strength training. This consists of exercises like squatting, reverse lunges, Bulgarian split squats, exercises that are gonna load the patella tendon, or things like calf raises, seated calf raises, both single leg and double leg. This will stiffen the Achilles tendon as well, which will help you get more lift when you're adding an approach. Generally, you're gonna wanna keep the sets around 3 to 6 sets, and you're gonna wanna keep the reps anywhere from 3 to 8 reps. If you're doing hypertrophy training, keep the rep range a little higher. If you're doing max strength training, keep the rep range lower. Similarly, if you're doing max strength training, keep the sets higher. If you're doing hypertrophy training, keep the sets on the lower end of that continuum. In short, a tendon is only as good as your ability to stretch it. Real quick, if you're interested in getting coached by us to stiffen your tendons, then go to THPStrength.com. Right now, we're running an offer where it's 90% off your first month, and if you don't jump higher in that first month, we will refund you your money entirely. Number 2, you need to retrain your brain. Even though you're not naturally an explosive athlete, you can train yourself to be more explosive. For example, Isaiah has far more type 2 fibers than I do. This doesn't mean that I can't jump higher with the fiber type that I have. I just have to train the fibers that I do have to be more explosive. Your brain is directly connected to your muscle, specifically through something called alpha motor neurons. We recruit force according to something called the size principle. This means that you recruit the smallest motor units first, which is the nerve and all the muscles it innervates, to the biggest motor units, which means that there's more muscle fiber for a given motor neuron. For example, in your fingers, you might have a motor neuron that innervates 1 to 5 muscle fibers, but in your quad, you might have 100 muscle fibers innervated by one neuron. Ideally, we're trying to get those bigger motor units to fire sooner, and you do this through one specific thing, and that is intent. What this means is trying as hard as you possibly can on a given lift, specifically lifts like squats, power cleans, and any triple extension exercise. The harder you try, the more neural impulses are sent from your brain to the muscle, and this will make you more explosive. This will recruit the type 2 fibers that you do have faster and more. This also allows you to be more coordinated, and it allows you to turn off the antagonists or the muscles that are going to be impeding your ability to do extension. So the big takeaway here is when you're doing things like squats, stand up as fast as you possibly can. When you're doing cleans and you're on the second pull, jump through the ground as hard as you possibly can. This is going to recruit those type 2 fibers sooner and more, and that's going to transfer over to jumping more and better. And number 3, you need to retrain your muscles. We touched on this in the last 2 points, but you need your muscles to be incredibly strong and also incredibly big. The number 1 thing that determines the strength of a muscle is the cross-sectional area. So if you were to cut a muscle in half, the area that you see when viewed from the side of the muscle determines the strength of it. If you look at any of the pro athletes that I coach, they have massive quads. Now, we're all given a certain amount of type 1 and type 2 fibers at birth, and this is actually dictated by your neurons. The type of neuron that fires to that muscle is going to determine whether it's more of a type 2 or type 1 fiber. You can't change the amount of type 1 or type 2 fibers because you can't change your neurons, but you can change the size of the given type 2 fibers that you have. Again, muscles are directly connected to your brain. So the harder you try, the more you're going to recruit those type 2 fibers and the bigger they're going to be able to get, which means that even though you have less, you can make the size of those muscles bigger. The harder you try, the faster those signals are going to be sent from your brain. For example, maybe it goes from 20 signals a second to 100 signals a second. You want to try as hard as you can to get those signals to fire off like a machine gun. More signals in less time means more type 2 fiber recruitment. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Intent is king. To increase intent, one easy way to do this is to add a VBT device. VBT stands for velocity-based training. The faster that bar moves, the more type 2 fibers are being recruited and the bigger they're going to get and the more explosive you're going to be when you go onto the court and try to jump. So while you can't get more type 2 fibers, you can make them bigger, you can stiffen your tendons, and you can have a faster, more wired nervous system that's going to allow you to use those stiffer tendons and big muscles. That's the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.